neighbor. Welcome back. That kind of sound like a voicemail. Anyway, so I'm going to speak on things that I don't know about enough to be speaking on again. But here we are. I was watching a movie yesterday. It was called The Devil's Advocate. And in the end of the movie, the devil was kind of venting how upset that he was with God and how God jokes. Like, he felt like God's jokes were really the way that he jokes, if that makes sense. Like, he felt like the way God handles things is in a cruel way and not justified. And he was venting to one of God's sons about how he was upset that God, I guess the way God treats him. I don't know. The movie was crazy either way it go. It's called Devil's Advocate. That was another movies from the 90s. I think it was in the 90s, late 90s. Either way it go. If you want to watch that movie, that Devil's Advocate is where I got that from. So I kind of was in I don't want to say spiritual court. Like I said, it's stuff that it don't even make sense to even try to explain. I don't really know how to explain it because it's just one of those things that if God's giving you the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you'll understand. But if you're not there yet, like don't feel discouraged or don't feel like what I'm saying ain't true either, you know? But I'm trying to figure out where to even start. So I was in a situation where I touched someone the same way I touched somebody else, but my intention in the way that I touched both of these people weren't perverted, if that makes sense. Like, the first person I touched, it was more so of like, oh, you didn't grow up. It was like, okay, for example, like my dad. When my dad, one day I was at his house and he squeezed my toe. And he was just like, don't think that's weird. That's just how I show affection because that's how my mom used to show affection to me. And granted, I didn't think it was weird. I felt like it was his way of exactly what he said because, like, I'm his child. So I kind of feel like I know him in, like, a deep level like that to not think what's strange is not strange if it's not strange, if that makes sense. So him explaining himself, he didn't have to, but he did. And it was just like, I don't know if he needed that comforting to know that I didn't think that was strange, but it was just more so like, I'm your child, so I understand. Like, I don't feel like you meant any harm or bad intention or ill will when you did that. And that's how I felt when I kind of like, I just like scratched, not, I have nails. So I like scratch. I don't know better way to say it. If you have nails, you just know. Like females that wear the nails, if you know, you know. One of them type of situations. So when I did it, I didn't feel no type of way. It was just more so like, you know how you squeeze a baby's face and it's just like, oh, you didn't grow up, or you seen somebody young and they didn't grow up and it's just like, oh, you didn't grow up. That's how my intentions was when I did that to the first person. Then the second time I did it, it was just more so like a playful manner, like, hey, I like a friend embracing a friend. Like I seen you and I was just, you know, embracing you. Like it was a small gesture of embracing, if that makes sense. And it wasn't like an ill intention when taking place at all. But the enemy tried to pervert that and make it the worst scenario that it could be. And like I said, it felt like I was in spiritual court because of this. Like I had to justify my reasonings behind different things I've done. And my mom passed away. And before she passed away, she asked me to do, you know how there's like the little dance routines that will just randomly pop up on the internet and everybody's doing them. She asked me to do the one that was with the song Touch It before she passed. And I said I wasn't going to do it because I'm not one of those people that likes to jump on things that social media makes popularized at the moment, because to me they feel more than what they're portrayed as. Like it seems lighthearted in the moment, and granted it can be lighthearted in the moment, but there's always something in the background making things worse than what they could be. And every time I see little trends like that taking place, I'm always side-eyeing it, because to me it just, I want to know what's the motive behind it. Like there's usually some type of spiritual motive behind it. And I never know how to explain it, or I don't know the full picture behind it, so I don't really discuss it or bring my opinions on it, because I don't want to misguide or mislead anybody, and I really don't like speaking on things that I really don't know about, to be honest with you. This is actually something new to me. God has been having me do this too often for my liking lately, talking about things that I don't fully know about before he like makes me understand what his intention behind it was. And those rituals are one of them. So she asked me to do that, and I was just like, no. And when she passed, I kind of felt bad, because to me it was just like, that was something lighthearted that didn't, you know, I don't dance, like, just by nature. It's not something that I can't do. It's just, I don't feel comfortable enough to dance, because I feel like I don't really be on beat. But when I don't feel like I could dance like that. I don't feel like I be in rhythm. But it's not something that I couldn't have done just because, you know, it was something lighthearted my mom wanted me to do with her, you know? And I would dismiss a lot of stuff that she would ask me to do with her, because it was more so probably to her just something lighthearted and fun to do. But me, I've always just wanted to know, like, what are the motives and then the intentions behind it. And granted, it's not that me and my mom didn't have the best relationship. It's just that our relationship isn't like every... It's got stories behind it. Like, it wasn't the best relationship. And it wasn't... I don't blame her for it, and I don't blame myself for it. It's just some things God does to... I don't want to say prove his point, but for his glory. Like, some things are just literally for his glory. And in that situation, I was questioning it then, but it's just like, I should have been questioning it now, and I wasn't questioning it like then, like I should have been now. But anyway it go. That's one of the trends she asked me to do with her. And I've noticed that a lot of that has been taking place recently. And because God has allowed me to see different things from a different perspective now, I understand how in one aspect it could be lighthearted, and then in another aspect it could be demonic. And granted, my mom passing away would be like the worst scenario, but she's not here, and I can't blame anybody. That's just what God intended for her life and her time of being here. Like, everybody has their set time, and that was her time. And I can't sit here and try to explain what God does when God wants to do it, if that makes sense. So I was noticing somebody at work giving me little snacks. And to be honest with you, I was just like, is this man treating me like Buddha? Don't they do that to Buddha? Like, I felt like I was being made an altar, if that makes sense. Like, because, like I said, it was a spiritual thing going on. And granted, I don't think that was his intention. Like, he could have just genuinely been thinking of me and wanted to just give me a snack just thinking about me, you know what I mean? But to me, in the way my mindset worked, I was just like, why this man treating me like Buddha? Like, I ain't no altar. Nothing against you. Thank you for the gifts. I appreciate it. But that's just what was going through my mind when it took place. And as I was just thinking on this throughout the week, I had to justify that in a godly sense, because it was just like, I don't trust people giving me food no more. I don't trust a lot of stuff. Like, life after my mom passed has made me not trust a lot of stuff, just to be honest with y'all. And when he gave it to me, I was just like, I wasn't as cautious as I normally am. And I was just like, okay, that's different. And I was kind of like talking to God about how him doing that felt different than how cautious I had to be with everybody else when people give me things or do things, because like I don't trust people no more. Like, my trust is really messed up, for real. But it had me thinking about the Bible verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 8. And it talks about food sacrificed to idols. And it's pretty much saying that just because you have knowledge of things a little bit more, don't take that knowledge and cause people to stumble. Like, now that I'm telling y'all this story, y'all could be out there like, oh no, don't not wanting to accept anything from anyone because you feel like it could be demonic. And it's like, that's not my intention, to cause anybody to stumble by telling you guys an experience that I went through and my thought process through the experience. But it's just that things like this do take place, but because we're covered with the blood of Jesus, we don't have to be overly cautious in these type of ways when the peace of God is like genuinely showing through it. And I really don't know if I said that the best way I could, but like, I didn't feel like his intentions were him making me a Buddha. But the thought process still came in my mind because that's just how I think. And when I was thinking of everything that was taking place in the past, it's literally been the past 2 weeks. So the week prior, I was spiritually charged up, and I kept asking myself, like, why am I feeling this way? And I thought it was because my menstrual was coming. Like, I mentioned that in one of the videos before. And because that's normally how I feel naturally when my menstrual is about to come. But the Lord it ain't even just the Lord. It was a whole spiritual battle going on to prove points. And what that whole experience for myself, it made me think about 3 different people in the Bible. The first person in the Bible it had me think about was Job, because I had to go back and read it, but I was thinking about how Job made sacrifices for his children just in case they sinned. And that kind of had me in that mind frame of my mom asking me to do that dance trend with her at the time, and things that have taken place now. And so I was just like, when I was reading it, it said that the angels presented themselves before God and Satan just showed up with them. Like, he just invited himself to be present with God. But God having a whole conversation with him, asking him like where he's been, and he's just saying like he just been roaming around the earth because like he been casted down, so he don't have very much to do but to be a menace to society. So God challenges, per se, Satan and points out Job to him and just like, have you considered my son Job? And it's just like, it made me think of that movie where the devil was upset that God would, per se, challenge him in this sense, knowing that he would win. So it was just like, he felt like it was a twisted game on God's end, making a twisted joke out of Satan, because like God knows that he's going to win in the end. But he accepted the game. He accepted playing the game. And it's just like, God had to prove his point to Satan and to Job in that situation? Satan, because God pointed out Job for a reason and wanted to prove to Satan that his relationship with his children are real, and that despite the devil's thought process of thinking that God's children only serves him because they feel protected by him, God had to show Satan that his children just genuinely loves him. Then he had to prove a point to Job by telling Job that even though things look crazy on the surface level, there's stuff going on in the background that you don't really know about, but I'm trying to prove a point to show how much I love my children and my children love me. And even though it looks like all of this stuff is taking place on the front end, I'm going to restore you on the back end. Like, it looks bad up front, but your latter days are going to be greater than your former days. The second person that had me thinking about was Jonah. So in the book of Jonah, God told Jonah to go to a certain place to kind of deliver these people by warning them of what he would do. And Jonah didn't want to go because he felt like God was going to restore these people anyway. And Jonah hops in a boat that's not going where he needs to go, and it's got a whole bunch of people that don't believe in the same God he believes in. So God starts shaking up the boat, causing a big storm, right? And Job just in the boat somewhere asleep, and these people are just like, you're not going to pray to your God? Like, why are you just so comfortable in this? And Job's just like, you know what, just toss me over. The only reason why y'all going through this is because of me anyway. And so when Job, these people tossed him over. They ain't want to at first, but they did. So when Job get tossed over, he in the belly of a whale for a few days. And God's just, letting him think about who he is in a deeper form, and causes Jonah to pray to him until the whale delivers him out of him. And in that process, Job ended up going to where God told him to go, and God delivers the people. And I think I said Job, but I meant Jonah. Jonah's upset that, God delivered these people, and God's just telling him, like, hold on, I'm going to go to it and read it real quick, because I read it again, and it was just like, well, dang, okay. Okay, so after Jonah then told these people what God told him to tell them, Jonah is like sitting under a plant. And what's crazy, I'm reading right now, it says God provided the plant. But God starts doing things with this plant and Jonah to get Jonah to be more grateful, I guess. So God provided a plant, and then he had a worm chew up the plant, and then he had the sun burn up the plant, And Jonah's just sitting there mad because he hot and bothered in the sun. And God playing around with this plant. And God just like this plant, like, you didn't provide this plant. You didn't tend to this plant. You ain't provided, you ain't tend to it, and now you angry that it's not here. But, like, what makes you think that I wouldn't be more so concerned about the people of Nineveh than you are with this plant, only because it's providing you shade in the shelter, or shelter and shade? And I don't know. I'm not going to explain too much about Jonah, but all of this had me thinking about Jonah as well in that process. Then, lastly, what I thought about was Daniel. And what I thought about in Daniel was how I had a phone call last week, and it was so random. Like, a lady got on the phone and she was just like, I've been trying to get to you to tell you everything's okay, and I haven't been able to get back to you since you left the message. And I'm just on the phone like, okay, like, that's so random. And then she got off the phone, and it was just like, I felt like it was more so of a spiritual confirmation that God was trying to let me know for something going on with myself. Like, there are things that I've done, and granted, the only reason why I feel bad about it is because of the consequences that came along with it. Like, I'm not really upset that I don't want to say thinking of myself, but tending to myself? Like, bro, I ain't saying I'm childish, but some stuff just be funny to me. But, like, I've done things that I'm not proud of, but it's just that they weren't things that I don't know. They had the same consequences as somebody else that could have been, let's say, someone more promiscuous, or someone that's just been out in the streets doing whatever. Like, even though I might not have been doing what the next person was doing, God has had me suffer some of the same consequences as other people, even though I might not have done the same crime, if that makes sense. Just like, I don't know if it's an actual Bible verse that says it, but I'm going to just say I've heard that no sin is greater than any other sin. I'm going to go look that up real quick, because, like I said, I don't like speaking on stuff I don't really know about, but hold on. Okay, this is so freeing. So it was James 2, 1 through 13. And basically it's saying that there's no favoritism in Christ. So, like, if you sin, all can be forgiven in Christ. And like I was saying, with this whole spiritual court that was taking place, there was a lot going on, and I don't really know if I can really explain it the way I want to, but I'm going to just set a scene of what was kind of taking place, which kind of was just like odd to me at the time, but it makes sense with all of this right here. So there was a guy who lost his keys, and the nurse was trying to help him find his keys. And the way he got down on the floor trying to help him find his keys was just like, I was I was looking at it crazy, but it was just he was trying to help him find his keys, and that was what it was. And then there was another scenario where 3 guys came in and they were waiting to have their they were waiting to be checked in for their appointments. And the 2 guys that was having a conversation with each other was sounding real philosophical and talking to each other like they were just the most scholarly of the scholars. And I'm not judging them for it. I took it as that's their personalities. I'm there to do my job, right? But there was another guy that was off in the back, and he was real quiet. And what kind of stood out was I didn't want to interrupt the guys that was speaking to each other, but I did need some information from one of the guys. And the guy that was in the back in the corner that was quiet kind of spoke up and was just like, what do you need, basically? And I was just like, I wasn't trying to ignore him, but him speaking up helped me get the attention of the other person that I needed to speak to. So I asked the other person what I needed from them, and then I asked him, his information that I needed from him next. And while we were in the encounter, there was like a spiritual covering taking place within this scenario. And when the guy left out that was trying to speak up for me, he left out quietly, and he just looked shamed and like kind of had his head down. But from my perspective, it wasn't like that at all. Like, not saying I was judging them other people, but it was just more so like those other people were more puffed up and proud, more prideful than the person that was off in the corner in the back. Just, to me, it looked like he was trying to get some understanding from the situation as well. And out of that encounter, there wasn't a judgment going on, but there was a judgment going on. Like, I can't explain it. That's just what took place that day. And go read James 2:1-13 to get your understanding of what you're supposed to get up out of that. But how we got there, Daniel, there was an angel so Daniel started praying. And by the time the angel got to Daniel, he was just like, I heard you from the moment you started praying. And I've been trying to get to you to tell you what is going on so you can have some clarity and a peace of mind. But I've been fighting principalities in the spiritual realm and haven't been able to tell you this because they didn't have me held up on whatever they didn't have him held up on, right? So in this physical of the natural spiritual mixing taking place, I felt like these were things that were happening to give a peace of mind to people that needed the peace of mind. Like, I was having a conversation with someone, telling them, like, if somebody on the outside heard me and my mom talking to each other, even if somebody in the spirit hears what I just said about spiritual challenges and hearing what my mom asked me to do, it would be like, girl, what? But from me and my mom's perspective, like, knowing how she jokes and knowing who I am, like, for her that's funny. For me, I guess I can make it funny for my type of thinking. And for whoever else is in relationship to know these type of relationship type things would be understanding because of relationship. Like, the enemy took what God does so harshly and was upset and mad at God and just had to vent his frustration because he doesn't have a relationship with God to be understanding. So just like when the end of Job, when God was just trying to tell him, like, were you there when I did this? Were you there when I formed that? Have you been there to be able to do this to principalities that are destroying my children? Like, have you been there? Do you know my intentions? Like, do you have my thoughts? And it was just like Job humbled himself and was just like, you know what, God, you right. I don't know. And you got your reasonings for the way you do things. And I'm just here. I'm here for it, for whatever you did. And forgive me. Right? And God restored Job because of that. In this situation, granted, all these people that is in this spiritual scenarios, they might be restored, but it was more so that peace of mind where God was trying to show people that he heard them from the beginning. And it's just things are taking place to be able to get you the answers that you need. Like, you're going to get these answers that you need, but right now it's some spiritual stuff that's taking place that, like, I just got to handle this part before I'm able to get to you to let you know that everything is okay. Even though he gave us a book that let us know from the beginning that everything was going to be okay. But that's besides the point. So, I wasn't going to go in order of what I wrote down, because when I wrote it down, I was just trying to get my thoughts on the page so that I didn't forget what I was talking about. But I might as well just go in order because the way I don't know. I just forget about it. Anyway, so I wrote down Jeremiah, and I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to write it down and then not put it in the order that I was kind of thinking about putting it in order in. But, you know, you got to leave room for God, because God going to do whatever he want anyway, to be honest with you. So, I was my intentions when I was going to Jeremiah, I was thinking about two things specifically. I was thinking about, there's a Bible verse that talks about how the sins of the parents and the sins of the children are pretty much like separate. Like, you're not going to be punished for your parents' sins, and you're going to have to be accounted for your sins. And that was Jeremiah 31, 23 through 40 is what I wrote, 23 through 40. I'm not going to read these. I'm just going to let y'all go read them. But that's what I have wrote down. And the second thing that I was thinking about was the Bible verse, Jeremiah 29, 11 through 13, where God is saying like that he has a plan for us. But when I ended up opening the book of Jeremiah 1 verse 5 actually stood out. And that one, it says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. And what stood out about that was granted, a lot of stuff we don't want to speak on or associate because we don't really know. So it's just like, it's hard to speak on things you don't know because like people just don't want to get it wrong. And like there's people that talk about numerologies and numbers, and it's just like, these are things that I don't even be wanting to talk about because like I don't know for sure. And I ain't trying to go to hell talking about stuff that I don't know about. But like these things take place, so it's just like, how wrong are they? And there's some people that some other people might really question their integrity, and God like let these people on my heart to feel like they not wrong. And like I said, in this whole spiritual court, it was just like, he ain't wrong. Like, God see him as a prophet, and it's just like, people outside looking in would be like, heck no, ain't no way that's one of God prophets. I know you lying. But it's just like, God uses the foolish things. I'm not finna get that Bible verse wrong, but that's a Bible verse. And it's because he wants people to understand that like his ways are not our ways. Like his thought process and doing things aren't the same way as the human mindset. So when we're thinking of things in one way, God is working out things in a whole different way. And just like I was saying before, how people, the Bible verse it was basically saying that because of Christ, one sin isn't greater than the other sin because of Christ. Like Jesus dying on the cross, his blood covered any and every sin that you can think of. And with these rituals and weird things that the enemy tries to do to discredit God, God continuously shows how he can debunk that. Like with Job, he's like, well, have you considered my son such and such? And it's just like, him? Like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, let's roll with that. How about him, Lord? Like, let's see. Like, you only feel like he because of this. And it's just like, God proving his points again. I know that that's not going to make sense to some because I really didn't say nothing. But, like, to the people it's supposed to make sense for, it's going to make sense. After that, it had me think of spiritual spouses. Because like I said last week, I was yearning for, I don't want to say a person because I ain't feel like I was yearning for a person. It's just the person just so happened to be in the mix of the feeling that I was feeling, because I kept saying it was, just nature, because I thought it was a minstrel, but it was all a part of this whole little spiritual court thing going on, right? And I don't know how to explain it, but it was like a spiritual paternity test going on. I know this sounds crazy. Sorry to anybody that's listening that actually really want to get to know the Lord and ain't there yet to know these type of things happens in the Lord. But there was a spiritual paternity test going on. There's like the last videos I was telling y'all about with Hagar and Sarah and Hannah and Penina. Like, this kind of like a continuation. So in the situation, it was just like comparing Hagar and Penina situations to Sarah and Hagar's situation to Penina and Hannah's situation. And it was just like a spiritual paternity test of what is the situation. Crazy. But it had me think about, I'm going to read it real quick to explain exactly what it had me thinking about. Okay, what it had me really thinking about was, so I was reading 1 Corinthians 7, and it wasn't just 1 Corinthians 7, it was 1 through 16 to be specifically. It wasn't just like husbands fulfilling their duties to their wives, or wives fulfilling their duties to their husbands. Wives fulfilling their duties to their husbands is what I was trying to say first. But I was thinking about husbands fulfilling their duties to their wives. Like, people always, when it comes to marriage and roles within the relationship, they take that wives being submissive to their husband and think that the wives just are supposed to be doing everything in a godly sense to just for their husbands. Like, most of the times when you hear people talk about marriage, or you listen to just the worldly sense, I'm gonna say the world talk about marriages, is more so husbands being providers and women submitting to husbands. But you don't hear about how those roles are reversed when needed. Like, I don't want that to sound not what I intend. So, like, people act like women don't have needs, like women don't get sexually frustrated. And it's just like, when you hear about those type of things, it's always like wives need to make sure their husbands aren't sexually frustrated. But it's just like, when I read this, it basically was saying that husbands need to make sure their wives not sexually frustrated too. And I'm not trying to make this just about sex, but it was just like, what I felt, to me, felt natural. Like, that's something that happens every month. Like, it's a monthly thing. Not saying it's a ritual, but it's a natural bodily function that takes place every month because a menstrual is coming. And most time women don't talk about it. We just call it PMS. Y'all only hear about the anger and the outburst and the crying and the things like that. But most women don't talk about the sexual frustration of that part of it, because women are if women want to be like modest or more like not deemed as promiscuous or attention seeking, these are things that we just don't talk about. It's not like it don't happen, but these are things we just don't talk about. So in a natural sense, it was just like, that's just my body naturally doing what it naturally does when it naturally does these things. But in a spiritual sense, it was like, I'm about to show y'all something in the spirit to let you know that things could be done in a godly sense, or things could be done in a you want to do it on your own type of sense. And I keep trying to say I'm not lusting after this man. To me personally, I'd be trying to justify it in my head saying that I'm not. But through that time frame, I was I was telling myself I wasn't thinking about this man. And I touched this man, and my body responded crazy, like it should not have. And but the thing is, like, it's been like this since I first seen this man, and I can't explain it. I don't want to look. Like I said, I'm like speaking on stuff I don't know about, so I don't be wanting to talk about it because, like, hey, it ain't. I shouldn't be feeling like that. And so when it happened, it was just like, to me, it was just that natural. That's just something that's just naturally how I feel anytime he comes around. So I just took it as that, and I wasn't making it more than that. It was just like a natural response to his presence, because he's just, he brings that type of energy out of me when he comes around, because he's like a man's man, and like these are things that I naturally like from a man. So it's just like my body naturally responds to it. It's not something that I'm trying to force myself to feel, or force of a feeling out of a situation intentionally. Like, I'm not trying to be lustful after this man. It's just my body naturally responds to this man. That is way too much information for y'all, but hey, it is what it is. So when I touched him, I shouldn't have, because my body it responded, and it shouldn't have responded the way it responded. So in that lesson of seeing how my body would respond to this man just from a touch, I told myself the next time I see him, I wouldn't touch him no more. Like, I wouldn't physically touch him, because like even a touch just, I just can't even explain it. I just can't even explain it. But the next time I saw him was in this whole spiritual court type of thing. Thing happening. I can't even speak. Like, so I made up in my mind that I wasn't going to touch this man. But even when he was around, it was still that same response, because that's just how it's been since I've seen this. From the first time I seen this man, it's been that way. Like, nothing has changed from the beginning. But it's just, I saw what happened when I touch him, so I don't want to touch him no more. Not that I don't want to touch him. I don't touch him because I saw what happened when I do, or did. So what took place in the spiritual realm was more so of a confirming of people speak about spiritual spouses all the time. And when I heard people talk about it, like, it's more so like people just talk about, they call them incubus and succubus, things I don't know about enough to be talking about. And they talk about how they like come to you in dreams. And this wasn't no dang on dream, bro. Like, this was like real life. So it was just like, how do you explain that? And then I don't want to say, so me and God been battling through if masturbation is wrong or not for a long time now. And in the process of it, I was, trying to watch videos on YouTube, trying to figure out what other people's thoughts on it was. And there was some people that was just like, it bring on spiritual spouses. And then there was other people that's just like, well, if you're not thinking about nobody, then it's not, you're not lusting in a way. So in my mind, it was just like, well, if I ain't lusting, I ain't thinking about nobody specifically, I'm not lusting, right? And God made a point out of it. And so, there was a confirmation of who God's children are in the spirit through that trial. And then there was a confirmation of how much God detests witchcraft in that trial. Because like I was saying in the book of Jeremiah 31:23-40, that the sins of the children won't be put on the parents, and the sins of the parents won't be put on the children. And God was showing how Jesus being in the middle of the thought process or the intentions covers the sins. So if we compare it back to Job made sacrifices for his children because if they potentially sinned, but they still died. And God was basically showing Job that he does things for his reasonings despite us feeling like we're doing everything right or righteous. Like sometimes God just does things to prove a point. And that whole scenario was to prove how much God's children love him, and how much that despite what the enemy thinks, his way of thinking isn't what God always intends. And in that situation, I have to think. I don't know how to speak on this, but there was a lot of people that died like in these past few days, and that's why I keep saying that it's like a ritualistic type of thing. And I'm comparing it to the way my mom was trying to do the dance with me, compared to demonic people doing things in a demonic way. So there are people who want to justify what they're doing as a way to debunk who God is and who Jesus is. That's the key. Like they want to cut Christ out the picture and say that God's plan for Jesus isn't what Christians, is not as important as Christians emphasize. But God continually shows people that believe in Christ why believing in Christ is so important. And like I was saying, how there was a hold up in the spirit with Daniel where he sent a prayer up, and the angel basically told him, like, I was trying to get to you, but I couldn't because of things that were taking place in the spirit. that's kind of how God is trying to explain to his children that are going through things, that are frustrated with their walk with Christ because they don't know if their walk with Christ is real or not. And it's like, even though God might not have answered your prayer just yet, it's something in the spirit that they working on in the background to get you the answers that you need. I'm gonna just leave that at that. That was a lot in itself, but I'm gonna just leave that at that. The next thing that I wrote down on this list, at least, it was about Lazarus coming back from the dead. And when I was reading it, Jesus was talking to the disciples in it. Then he was talking to Mary and Martha. Was it Mary and Martha? Them the sisters, right? Mary and Martha. Then he was talking to God, to be honest with you. But like in a broad sense, so everybody could hear his prayer to him. And the scripture for Lazarus' story is John 11, verse 1 through 4. 4? Why did I say 4? 1 through 44. And basically what happened in the book of Lazarus died. But when they got the word to Jesus that Lazarus had died, Jesus told them that it wasn't, actually they told him he was sick. And Jesus told them, well, this sickness won't result in death. And Jesus stayed where he was at instead of like running to them immediately, and Lazarus ended up dying. So Mary and Martha are somewhat upset with Jesus because they just like, if you were here, like he wouldn't have died. And Jesus is just like, he knew his intention, but because he loved them so much, he felt their emotions with them. And that kind of stood out to me in it. But Jesus is just telling them like, didn't I tell you if you believe you will see like the glory of God? And they're just like trying to tell them like, well, Mary and Martha, they both speak with Jesus at two different times, but they both basically expressing the same thing. And Martha and Mary just like, yeah, we believe that, you're the Messiah and that we all gonna be resurrected someday, but like if you was here, he wouldn't have died. And there's a crowd around watching this at the same time, And they're not, I don't want to say they like mocking him, but they're just like, how can you open the eyes of a blind man and not be here to keep a sick man from dying? And Jesus prays to God, and he asks God, he didn't even ask God. He told him, thank you. He thanked him for hearing him. And he said out loud that he always knew that they hear him, or he hears him. But he said this for the benefit of the other people. And something else took place in the natural, where it was just like, Lord, what was that? And to me, it was a confirmation for God's children to know that he hears them. And for anybody else in the situation, it was their confirmations that they needed from God, and the times that they needed their confirmations from God, if that makes sense, for the people that it was supposed to be for. Like, it was said to be said for the people that needed to hear it, but the intentions was always going to be the intentions that was set forth, because God and Jesus has a relationship. So it's like, yeah, I'm saying this prayer out loud for these people to hear it, but I already know you was going to do this, because that's our relationship. And that's what stood out to me in that passage of Jesus bringing Lazarus back to life. Because afterwards, he told Lazarus, come out the grave, and Lazarus came out the grave. What stood out next, like I said, this ain't in order, but of the way that it was given to me, but this is the order that I wrote it down in. I wrote about how so what I wrote was, it was Mark 5:21-43, which is the story of the lady with the issue of blood touching Jesus' garment, and Jesus bringing back a girl that was sick, that he also said was asleep, back to life. The reasons why I was thinking of these Bible verses was because it had me thinking of those intentions again. Like, when I touched that man, I wasn't touching him in the intentions of being perverted or trying to cop feels or nothing like that. It was just more so of a playful embracing of someone that I just genuinely enjoy being around and seeing them. Like, it was that. It was like, I saw him, I enjoyed, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. So I had just thought of that encounter with this Bible verse, and it was just like, what type of deliverance was needed through either touching or not touching a person based off intention. Like, this lady, she went out her way to reach and touch Jesus to be delivered. And for me, I felt like playfully touching this man helped bring a deliverance that wasn't even intended. Like, it wasn't even just a deliverance for myself. It was a whole deliverance on the spiritual level that needed to take place for people that needed different healing in different areas that may not have even known they needed healing or deliverance in these areas. And it was just like, it all came back down to the intention. So when I read the Bible verse again, it was like the disciples. So, okay, let me go back to it. Let me go to it. So initially, Jesus comes to a place and there's a guy there that's asking him to go to help him with his daughter. But as he's going through the crowd, the lady touches him and Jesus stops everything and was just like, who touched me? And the disciples are looking around like, it's a lot of people here. Like, why would you ask that when it's all these people around here just touching all up on each other? Like, and it's not in a demonic or a perverted way. It's just they're in a crowd with a lot of people and people are touching each other, and it's not in a perverted sense. So it was just like, it was that same scenario to me. It was just like, Lord, why is this a spiritual issue when it wasn't a perverted matter? And it was more so that comforting taking place again. Like, Jesus stopped everything to have this one-on-one encounter with this lady to let her know that she can go in peace and suffer no more. Like, her faith made her just touch him. For me, I'm talking about me, I told myself not to touch this man the next time I saw him because I didn't know what was going on in the spirit. And I love God too much to disrespect him in any type of way, in those type of senses. And I felt like it was the same thing on the opposite end. It's just like, this man probably don't even see me like that. And I'm not trying to create nothing that's not what it is. So it's like God had to set in place like a spiritual court to show what things are and what things are not, because the enemy will try to pervert things to make things not what they are, to have people bound and tied up in things that is not God's intention. So God could be literally showing the perspective of some wives submitting to husbands and husbands submitting to wives, and the enemy will come in and try to pervert it into a ritual. But God turned things around in a sense to bring deliverance and clarity and peace. Now, it started off with this dad trying to get his daughter back to life. Ended up with some healing in the middle. And then God still healing the man's daughter in private. And making it a one-on-one between this man, his daughter, and Jesus. Because the crowd laughed at Jesus. Didn't they laugh? Let me go back and read. Yeah. So it says, he went in and said to them, why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and the mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. So, a miracle that everybody could have seen, God made it a private situation because they wanted to laugh at this way that God does things. But moving along, I wrote down John 9, 1 through 4, which is the man that God ended up spitting on his eyes. Well, he spit on the mud and then put it on his eyes. So the man was born blind, and Jesus, another one-on-one encounter, heals him, and here come the Pharisees wanting to I don't even know what to call them, but they asking this man, like, how is he able to see when he was born blind? They done brought his parents into the situations. The parents scared, talking about something. He grown, let him speak for himself. And the man just like, I don't know. I just know this man was here. He helped me see. I was born this way, and now I can see. After that whole situation, the man run into Jesus again, and Jesus is just like, Jesus asked him, do you know me, basically? And the man is like, who are you? And Jesus is like, I am him. That ain't exactly how it say it, bro. It's not. But Jesus encounters the man again, and Jesus is just asking the man, like, do he believe in the Son of Man? Like, God's like basically just trying to get confirmation from this man on belief. And the man is just like, no, I don't know who that is, but can you tell me about him so that I could believe him? And God's just like, well, I'm him, and he believes him because he's seen the miracle that God just did. And Jesus basically tell him that for judgment I have come into this world so that the blind will see and those who see will become blind. And the Pharisees, snooping around again, asked him, what are they becoming blind to? And Jesus told them, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But now that you claim you can see, your guilt remains. How it tied into what was taking place in the past 2 weeks. There was a situation where God did something for himself to show people to believe in him, that God just does things for his glory, and to have people believe who he is, believe who he says he is, on top of believing why he sent his son to do the things that he does. And I think that just said exactly what took place for what it was. Like, we just gonna leave that at that, because that's what it was. And what I kind of ended all of this on was, I put Luke 20:27-39, and I believe that's where these people were really trying to mock God, but was asking, it's these Pharisees and Sadducees again, but they were trying to mock God with asking him a question. And they asked, like, if a man dies and a brother marries the woman to keep the lineage going, and that brother dies and she doesn't have any children, like, whose wife is she at the end of the end? And Jesus basically tells them, like, in the end, there isn't marriage. Like, let me go to it. 1 second. Okay, so their whole point in asking God this question was to question, like, his authority. And they were going through all of these different questions, asking Jesus to see, like, what his response would be. And then they asked him about this one when it came to marriage. And Jesus basically told them, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in the age to come and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. And they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. It also says, but in this account of the burning bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise, for he calls the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living, for to him all are alive. Some of the teachers of the law responded, well said, teacher, and no one dared to ask him any more questions. That's got meaning in itself for who it needs to have meaning for, but basically people are trying to put worldly standards on godly situations, and God just keep debunking the intentions, his intentions, compared to their justifications or their reasons behind why they're asking God these types of questions. And when I read that, it made me think of, so it had me thinking of Psalms 8:4, where it's basically asking, like, who is man that God is mindful of man? And then what just stood out to me now when I was reading it, it was saying that and the Son of Man, for you visit him. Like, even the questions in itself, the intentions are different behind it. Like, that questioning is more so from a humble stance of just like, who are you that you care about us that much to think of us in these ways, compared to them asking questions in more so of like a mockery way to justify wrongdoing or justify things that people want to, things that's not even above, like, you know. And so it was just like one of them teaching moments again, kind of how he did Job and Jonah, and pretty much like being that confirmation like he was with Daniel. And after writing all of this down and going through all the thought process, what it ended up going back to was John 11:41-42, which says, so they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. It's just God proving points the way that God always have proved points, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, all the way down to his son, Jesus Christ again. But The main point that he's proven now in that situation is that Christ lives in us, and he's showing us, or his people, how much Christ is within us by showing us things that he can do through us that are kind of a comparison to things that he's done in the Old Testaments to make us believe that it's him doing these things for us, so that we don't end up being like the modern day Pharisees and Sadducees trying to mock God with things that we just don't know and understand. But yeah, that's how the last 2 weeks have been. And till next time.